Hi everyone, my name is Erin Meyer. I am the Sustainable Food Programs Coordinator at the University of California, Merced. Today we have an awesome AMA scheduled. I'm going to throw it over to Guillermo just real quick so we can zip through these intros and have him introduce himself, and then we can start off. So Guillermo, go for it.
Oh, hello everyone, welcome to the AMA. I'm Guillermo Ortiz. I'm the Sustainability and Diversity Educational Programs Manager here at UC Merced. I'm really excited to introduce our guest, Nakárori, who's going to be really providing a unique perspective with our AMA series. This AMA series has started to really hear from different sustainability professionals or people who are interested in climate action and hear from their different perspectives and expertise. And so with that, I won't go into a lengthy introduction, but Nakárori, I'm going to turn it over to you so people can learn more about who you are, what you're doing, and get excited about the incredible work that you're engaging in.
Fantastic. So I'm sensing a little bit of accelerated movement, and I want to bring it down, slow it down a little bit. Let's start it on time. We're going to end on time. And I really thank people for being here. And again, I apologize for the delay, but it's gonna be great. So I'd like to hear from the people out in the audience. What are the ancestral lands that you're on right now? Or does anybody identify as Indigenous? I'm curious. You can put into the chat. You can chime in. You don't need to raise your hand, just talk. I'm just curious where people are dialing in from.
I'm calling in from Australia. I live on the homelands of the Quandamooka peoples, who are the Aboriginal people of the East Coast, Central East Coast of Australia, the islands and waters, and I am of Scottish-Danish descent, second generation here in Australia.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. Anybody else want to share? Okay. Well, thank you. I appreciate to UC Merced for having me here. I'm right now on Tohono O'odham and Pasquayaqui lands. And I want to honor your ancestors and my ancestors and the ancestors of these lands that we're currently standing on wherever we may be joining from this webinar. Mis abuelos del lado de mi madre son de Colimaitl y Mazatlán. Mis abuelos en el lado de mi padre son Rarámuri y del Encino. I just let you know about my ancestry. Rarámuri, Colimaitl, Encino, and Mazatlán. So in this talk, I'd like us to reflect on what kind of ancestors do we want to be? Do we want to be an ancestor that perpetrates climate injustice? Do we want to be an ancestor that's survived climate injustice? Or do we want to be an ancestor that's a change maker for climate justice? Or somewhere in between? These are just three simple ways to kind of think about as we're going through this talk. And I'm going to use my indigeneity to connect with you, share about myself, and highlight the climate justice issues from my own perspective. And then maybe at the end, through the Q&A, you can share from your perspective what your thoughts are. So my journey with this started as I was trying to figure out how to make a bigger difference in the world. As you heard from my bio, I've done some development work, but I've realized that by connecting with my indigeneity, I can do bigger work on a grander scale. And so through this talk, I'm going to share where I've been and where I'm going. Let me grab my drum. Actually, this is actually really good. Kanyamatope, are you there? Hey, can you come on the screen? Can you come on the screen? Are you there? So this wasn't time, but this is my indigenous mentor, Ganyamatope, all the way from Zimbabwe. And every week we have spirit food. We talk about the ancestors, and he's been guiding me through this. Due to some family issues, he isn't able to participate, but he just called to wish me good luck. Anyways, back to the, all right. Geez, I guess you can. Are you there? Okay, here, say hi to our peeps, Kanyamatope. Can you see him?
I can see the window.
Okay, so they can see you. Tell them a little bit about our ancestors, amigo. I was just about to start on that part.
The ancestors are within us, within the earth, within all our understanding and our thirst to keep learning. I guess that's what's coming to my mind just now.
Thank you, amigo. I apologize for putting you on the spot. Do you want to stay here or do you want to go?
I will stay, but it's good to see you, but I'm gonna jump to, in fact, let's do it. I'm packing.
Okay.
So I've reached that slightly impatient end of packing where I want to be finished because it's taking so long, so many things to consider. Remember the conversation we had about the gifting and all that?
Yes. Ganyamatope, I'm in the middle of the actual presentation right now. Yes.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
Okay, continue.
Okay.
I can stay and listen.
Okay, you stay right here with us. So he's part of my global network of indigenous leaders that I'll talk about later. That's Kanyamatope. All right, so back, here we go. Yo soy de las nieves Rarámuri. I am from the ancestral lands of the Sierra Rarámuri with its beautiful earth. We are the earth. Yo soy de los fuegos Colimaitas. I am from the fires of the volcanoes of Colimaitl. We are the fire. Yo soy de las olas de Mazatlán. I am from the waters of Mazatlan. We are the waters. Yo soy de los vientos de mi barrio, del este de Los Ángeles. I am from the winds of East LA that carry the cultural sounds of my hood. We are the winds of our ancestors. Yo soy el polvo universal de las estrellas. I am the stardust of my ancestors. We are the stardust of our ancestors. This is a way that I'm going to tie throughout the talk our connection, my connection to you, to the planet, to each other, as we nurture and are nurtured by the earth, the fire, the wind, the water, we also nurture each other. And before I continue, I want to share a little prayer, and I'll ask just, you can maybe pray in your own way or have a little reverence as I connect with my ancestors. Wira, hello. Rayanari, sun. Matatera va universo. Thank you, universe, for another day of life and health, time and energy, resource and bounty, to be on this Zoom call with people that want to learn about how to protect Indigenous rights across the world. May we use our gifts wisely and in service to you. Thank you for these gifts for all our relations, non-human and human. As for myself, I humbly devote myself to you, my mind, body, and soul, my flesh, blood, and bones, my being, aura, sense, source, and self are all yours. Please, universo, please empower me to develop my highest self in service to your greatest good. In your almighty presence, love and compassion, kindness, forgiveness, I pray. Nakárori, Sakantlana, thank you. So what got me more involved with this was reflecting on my childhood in my grandmother's mud hut, sleeping in the mud hut, aquifers underneath, singing in my dreams to me, singing to us, going to the wells, bringing back the water, living with the rhythms of the light, of the sun, of the rain. And then also, unfortunately, seeing my grandmother and grandfather being displaced, my father being displaced from his ancestral lands, coming to the US. At times I've experienced hunger, thirst, not knowing why, but getting by somehow. Fortunately, my dad was able to work 3 to 4 jobs, eventually getting us out of poor, violent neighborhoods. I got an education, as you heard from my bio, I was able to do meaningful work. And now I'm in a position to do even more meaningful work. And all of us here on this webinar can contribute in our own way, either to Indigenous climate justice or to climate change, whether we're lawyers, doctors, artists, musicians, academics, professors. We all have a role to play. Taking it more specifically to the Rarámuri lands of my grandfather, climate justice, injustice today is affecting our peoples. The crops aren't producing the way they used to. We're unable to hunt the deer as easily as we could before, running after them until they collapse, and then bringing home the lovely flesh for our people to partake, to supplement the grains and the legumes. Now there's hoteliers coming into, developing, bringing in big hotels, stealing our lands, displacing us, or loggers taking our forests. And even worse in our situation, since it's so remote, narco traffickers now. So people selling drugs, and they're infiltrating our people to get us to sell drugs for them. And just in the way that from our microcosm of Rarámuri's peoples are being affected, there's similar impacts across the globe in indigenous lands, whether it's in Australia, the blue continent of Oceania, the polar regions, Canada, the US, pipelines, mines, minerals were being impacted. So with this in mind, I'd like to take 1 minute of silence to honor and commemorate those who have lost their lives due to climate injustices. Thank you. With all this injustice happening in the world, it can be overwhelming. I don't know about for you, but for me it has, and at times it can be paralyzing. So what I've learned through my different mentors, including Kanyamatope, is to focus on what I can do one day at a time, having the big vision that sustains me. And this vision is that one day, indigenous families around the world, all indigenous families, will scan the horizon and look at their ancestral lands and know that we'll be able to nurture those lands for the benefit of all our relations, non-human and human. So with that big vision in mind, each day I get up between 4 and 5 in the morning, 4:15, boom, jump out of bed. Okay, what am I gonna be able to do today? And just go one step at a time until it's around 8 o'clock at night, pull the plug, get my rest, do my prayers, and then do it again. But it's invigorating. And I won't go into the stats about how our oceans are being polluted, how the air is being polluted, fires, wildfires around the globe that are happening on many continents, harvests being ruined, and it's affecting budgets, public health, and the environment. But what I do want to talk about is this, a way that I'm approaching this is through an organization, Autochthonous Biosphere Coalitions, ABCs, for Indigenous Climate Justice. And the idea is that we're expanding Indigenous-led coalitions to advocate for ourselves so that policymakers follow through on laws and promises to ensure that Indigenous rights are honored so that our vision can happen. One example of how this might work is right now, the island nation of Vanuatu, they've submitted a claim to the International Court of Justice to basically ask that the court give an opinion on whether nations that have caused damage through pollution, logging, in various ways to other nations, if they can be held liable. This is tricky because there's a power imbalance, but through expanding the coalition, as I'm describing, we'll be in a better position to get a favorable opinion to hold others accountable for injustices. And in this way, lessons that Indigenous leaders learn in the polar regions or in rainforests or in arid lands on how to advocate for ourselves and stop others from encroaching on our lands. We can share this knowledge, share this wisdom to improve our position and the health of the planet. With this, I'd like to take another moment of reverence to savor the sweet breath, the sweet air that we have around us. Most of us on this Zoom, including myself, have relatively clean air that when I breathe, I know it's not going to affect my health. Unlike in my childhood, where there was a dump of toxic waste and things and potentially lead in the pipelines, pollution in the air that was affecting our health. Here, I can breathe freely. So take a moment right now. Take a deep breath. Join me, please. And feel that clean, sweet air circulate through our lungs, that life-sustaining air. And know that there's others around the world that don't have that benefit, that aren't able to take in that sweet breath of air. And think about, what can we do? What can you do from your position, directly or indirectly, to change this? What kind of ancestor are you going to be? What kind of ancestor am I going to be? Am I going to be a perpetrator, a survivor, a change maker, something in between? I know what I want to be. Let's hope that I can follow through. As we go forward, I would ask that, that we collaborate around this realm. My LinkedIn is connected to my bio. Through that, if you message me, we can find ways to collaborate, whether it's in your area of expertise, or in areas that I can support you, or areas that you can support me. And with this, I'm going to share a song that the Helping Spirits shared with me this morning. And this song is simple. 3 words: hoja, ojos, cielo. Now, these simple words were offered to share with you, and they can help heal, help bolster, help energize. In whatever way you contemplate, they're here for you. You can use playful way, but I'm going to end with that. Hojas, leaves, ojos, eyes, cielo, sky. Now we'll transition to the Q&A. Thank you for your time.
All All
you so
right,
much.
if anyone has questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. Guillermo, I'm sorry I interrupted. What were you going to say?
No, Aaron, I was just gonna open up for the Q&A, so keep going ahead.
You can also unmute, and I have some that came in via the registration too, but I will throw it to you all first.
I've got a question on indigeneity. I think there's so many of us who are displaced from our ancestral homelands. The world is such a moving place. I wondered how you connected with your ancestors. I know you spoke about your experiences, but there are other ways that I know when there is Aboriginal ceremony that I'm part of here, we connect with ancestors. You know, I wondered what you had to say about how you do that, sir.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that question. So it's interesting, my ancestral connections were around me as a child. My grandmother was curandera. So as a child, she would, say, "Hey, Nakárori, go get these herbs, go get this, go get that, bring them back." And then she would do her chants, her healings, her smudges, her teas, her ointments. And I would watch, but she didn't explain to me what she was doing or what was happening. It was, I guess, her indirect way of teaching me. And, as a child, my dad took us to the ancestral lands. The Sierra Rarámuri is in what is now known the chain of mountains that go from the Rocky Mountains down across the border of what is now known as Mexico. And a sliver of that, what people call Copper Canyon, is a Sierra Rarámuri. And there's a book about called Born to Run. And that book talks about our ancestors. So as a child, I would go there, and I can right now even smell the trees as we're winding up into the mountain, the cooler air, the waterfalls. But because in Mexico, indigenous people are marginalized back then and now, my dad didn't talk about the Rarámuri connections. And it wasn't until I took a course in how to facilitate shamanic healings that all this awareness came to light. And I started making all these connections about my past. And through my journeys with drumming and connecting via other realms with my ancestors and helping spirits, that connection has gotten bigger, broader, and richer, to the point now that when I talk to Ganyamatope from Zimbabwe, or Joe from Australia, or Avi from Indonesia, or Dana from Aretoa, New Zealand, we have this connection on different continents of how our ancestors speak to us, how our ancestors nurture us. And this is how I keep my connection to my ancestry alive, and how our ancestors guide us. And in fact, my ancestors, through my heart and heart guidedness, are the ones that told me about this idea of developing this network of indigenously led leaders to advocate for ourselves on different continents. And through these ancestors, I was connected with Uncle Jibalam through Joe, the most prominent indigenous leader in Australia. So I hope that answers your question, Joe. Thank you. Someone has their hand up. Lisa?
Hello, thank you for your patience. I have a questions of some of the practices that you do when you're faced resistance, either within yourself or within others, and to see that common ground when it feels very, very far apart. Yeah, that's my question. Thank you.
So just to make sure I understand the question, Lisa, thank you for asking. So how do I approach others when I'm feeling resistance, or also environments? What was the
I was thinking the resistance both within yourself for like the change when there's been a hardship, or when you feel or when you experience resistance from others, and how do you like overcome that to find the connection or common thread, or like that we're all are on this planet together, but in different ways.
Yes, so there's two. When I'm it's easier, interestingly enough, it's easier for me to approach resistance from others because right away I engage with them and I try to connect with them, even if they're being aggressive toward me or belligerent, or maybe even trying to attack me. I first kind of make some space, diffuse the situation, and then try to check in with them. How are they doing? How was their day? What's going on? Depending on the extreme, even to include counter-aggression. I remember one time this guy I saw him jerking a lady around, and I passed on my bicycle and I turned back around and I asked the lady, "Are you okay?" And she looked at me, and the guy, this big guy, muscle bound, he's like, "Hey, back off." And I could see him coming at me. So I was smaller than him, but I made myself big with my ancestors beside me, took my shirt off, threw it down, and said, "Hey, look, you see this chip on my tooth? I didn't get it eating chocolate," something like that, something to tell him, "Hey, back off." And he did. And he left the girl alone. We didn't become friends, but it diffused the situation. It's rare that ever happens, but that's one extreme. Usually it's more like, "Hey, how's it going? How was your day? What's going on? I see that you're upset with the situation." And then make a connection. And then we're like, a lot of times, like not buds, but we have like a rapport, and we walk away feeling good about the situation. Now, when it's within me, that's a lot harder because I used to have a sense of like, I still do, rose-tinted glasses, seeing the world like things are good, and I wasn't seeing when things weren't, I guess, less favorable. But I want to again highlight my sibling, my indigenous sibling, Gamayatope from Zimbabwe. He said, "Nakárori, we have to be ready for adversity, amigo." And I'm paraphrasing, he doesn't use amigo, he uses his Shona language. He's like, you gotta, when you see adversity coming, put the kettle on. He lives in Scotland now. Put the kettle on, break out the biscuits. So when they roll in, you can welcome them. And so by welcoming adversity, and he's like, and you know what? Let them stay, be a great guest. And whenever they're ready, they'll roll, but embrace them. So now I'm learning through that example, through other leaders, through other authors, through other practices, to basically be more aware of what before were less favorable feelings. And now I'm like, okay, there's something to learn here. Come on in, be my guest, stay a while. And what tends to happen is that they leave sooner than I would have expected, but they leave having left me a lesson. And it's like a richer fabric of my life and engaging the world. Does that answer your question, Lisa? Cool. Anybody else?
We had a question in chat that I want to read off. It says, how have you supported conscious expansion to policymakers who may not view non-human connections, spirits, and messengers as carriers and communicators of real knowledge? And then in parentheses, even though they may not yet be able to tap into this knowledge base themselves.
Right, so this is part of the challenge, and the beauty is we have some precedents. So Ecuador, already in their constitution, has the divine right of nature acknowledged so that the rainforest, the mountains, the waters are afforded equal protections as a human. And as a result, through those protections, those that encroach on those rights can be prosecuted. Now, in reality, it's not a full prosecution in its own, but that's a massive step. New Zealand, Aotearoa, they've also included in their legislation language that protects the land in a similar way. So through this network of continental coalitions of indigenously led leaders, we can amplify this awareness to increase policy, to shift policymakers' perspectives that just like they're concerned about the well-being of a human, it behooves us to be concerned for the well-being of nature, to put in legislation and protect them. I don't know who asked the question, but I hope that answers. If there's anybody else that maybe it didn't answer that question, let me know and I can expand. Any other questions? So if there are any questions, I'm curious from the audience, we have a few minutes. I'd like to take advantage of your background, your experience to share with me. So part of what I'm trying to do is get this talk onto the TED stage. There's a lot of work to refine. I'd have some slides, I'd have smoother flow, nicer transitions, highlighting the bigger points, get into more stats. But I'm curious if there's any feedback. Actually, I'd like to open to some critical feedback of ways that I can improve from your perspective. I sense that there's people there with different backgrounds that probably have something to offer, and I'd like to hear that. Please, don't be shy. Or you can put it in the chat if you're too shy to say it. Go ahead, Marta.
So, hi, Marta Armas Kelly from Catholic Charities Environmental Justice Group, and I'm also the advocate for United Tribes of California. And I'm thinking that for us, it's been really important to make that connection. I think that as Indigenous people, we haven't really been able to have that seat. And now with environmental justice groups looking at us for answers such as permaculture, that they call it permaculture, where for us it's in the way of being and the way of living. And so it's interesting now that everything's kind of gone awry, that we're being brought full circle to kind of work as a conduit for the mending of our environment, learning how to have reforestation, cultural burnings, things that we've had in our history for so many years. But for us, it's really been important to have healing circles so that we can meditate and be able to reflect on the gift that we've always had. But for many of us, it had been marginalized due to colonization. I myself am Cachcañe. My father was born in Zacatecas, Mexico. My mother is Guatemalan in Escuintla, Guatemala, and I'm from here. But it's interesting that as I started becoming more and more aware of my cultural roots, I was given such a facade and a lie of where I came from. I knew I was Indigenous, but I had no idea that we're all one, that we're so connected. And it was such a beautiful thing to be enlightened and be given that power. My friend told me once that once you find out your Indigenous awakening, you can never go back to being blind. You'll want to explore, and you'll want to be able to feed that part of who you are, and you'll want to share it. So I think with the healing circles, for me, it's been a way of being able to let people just kind of explore and mend their hearts and allow themselves to forgive and also forgive themselves for not acknowledging their true essence.
Thank you, Martha. That's fabulous. So I'm definitely feeling you're speaking my language, and that's basically, you describe what's happened to me, this expansion. So it seems like maybe a thing that I could do is maybe offer a space within the talk, like a mini type of healing circle to allow people to reflect on the past, the present, forgiveness. Is that what you're suggesting, Marta? Okay, that's what I'm going to take.
I'm really trying to, I'm really trying to create that that meaningful and I guess intentional space, right? You're looking at intentional space, because in everything that we're doing with this Indigenous awakening, I think that a lot of times it goes so fast and it's so exciting and so motivational for all of us that we forget that we have to feed ourselves, that we have to cleanse ourselves, that we have to pray over ourselves, that we have to protect ourselves, because it's so easy to be guided by anything but what we're really about. Our Creator has given us such a power. And when we have that power, we have to acknowledge our Creator in all the steps and the things that we do, so that when we go out and speak, we're covered, we're protected, that the words flow from our spirit and not from our own selves, that we acknowledge our Creator in all things. And I think that as that light shines and resonates, people will be drawn to that, and they want to understand more about why and how. For me, I was asked to do like kind of guidance for nonprofit with a UTAC, which is the United Tribes of California. And they were in the infant stages, and they still are developing, but it was a lot of, can you help us with our mission? Can you help us? How do we start this nonprofit? And as I was doing this, I was thinking, oh my goodness, I'm not good enough for this, or I'm not ready for this, So then I started praying, and it started coming to me. This is where you need to be. So when we find our place and we start developing that, we need to always be conscious of where it's derived, where it's coming, acknowledging our ancestors and the power that they had. When I do and I speak, I always think about how I am going to honor those that came before me, the ones that struggled before me. So my idea is always to be connected, and that healing circle can be done in art, can be done in using trauma-centered approaches, because that's where I derive a lot of my knowledge from, and really just being conscious of the task that's set before us, because it is the time. We need to either change or the earth will change for us, and we need to be aware that this is a higher calling, not I know that some people think of things like, in the religious perspective, as far as we need to bring more people into the fold. Yes, but there's also part of taking care of the earth. We are the caretakers. And as we've been given this task, we felt short of it. And that's why we're in this predicament. And I don't blame it on one person or one group of anyone. We all are responsible. And there is no lines. I think that sometimes we tend to think that we're here and they're there, but even so, the land and the earth is all consuming. It's part of us, all around us. So we need to be mindful and also teach others how to care for that, and be not afraid to share, because at this point we need to involve as many people into recognizing there has to be a change.
Thank you, Marta. Would you be willing to share your contact information with me so we can talk about this further?
Of course.
I can capture some passion for my next talk.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'm a bit much, but I love what I'm doing, and I feel that when we all ascend, I think that it'll be such a beautiful thing to be able to leave a legacy for those that haven't been awakened.
Yeah, can you please put your contact either in the chat or send it to Guillermo private if you don't want everyone else to know, and then he can forward it to me. Guillermo Ortiz.
Absolutely. Aaron, I think we had some questions in chat, or questions that came in via email.
Yeah, I wanted to get to a couple of those. So one off the bat, it was more of a comment. They're interested in learning more about building global alliances with Indigenous peoples towards justice for all, with an emphasis on the all.
Yes, so basically to build those alliances, contact me, give your contact information. Oh, actually they left, we don't know who, do you have their email? Whoever left that message, do they have their contact information? But basically through the organization that I'm starting with other Indigenous groups around the world, that's what we're going to be doing. So that's the way to do it.
Awesome. Another one said, how can ordinary citizens stop exploitation of Indigenous land through elections, boycotts, protests, other action, question mark?
Yikes, that's a big question. And what I would offer is do it from the place that feels good and true and aligned with you. Don't feel pressure to do something because someone else said it was the right thing to do. For example, there's people that are living on Indigenous land that have actually given back, like the house that they're on, and given it back to the Indigenous group, title and all, to show their way of reconciling. The average person in the US probably isn't in a position to do that, including myself. I'm reveling on Pascua Yaqui lands, but if I owned a house here, I don't know if I'd be able to be in a position to do that. All the things that were listed, city council, protests, but what I would say is kind of do whatever it is you're already doing. If you're an architect, think about ways that architecture can enhance the environment to make it more sustainable. If you're an artist, think about ways that your art might highlight these issues, whether it's a graphic designer, a filmmaker, a singer, songwriter, poet, whether you're an educator, a banker, there's ways to use your natural skills, talents, and hobbies to make a difference around Indigenous climate justice. And if you can't think of any, contact me through LinkedIn and we can talk about it further. There's all kinds of things that we can do. Next question. And it seems like if we're going to finish right at 4, I'd like to ask for 1 minute to wrap things up. What's the normal protocol for this, Guillermo and Aaron?
Great question. I want to just make sure we hit on one other one. How do you connect with your ancestors? It's been touched on a bit, but anything else on that note?
For me, basically my ancestors are around me and they're with me right now. And so now after I've had this awareness, it's automatic. When I pray, when I drink, when I eat, when I wake up. Sometimes if I want a deeper connection, I'll journey to them. I'll drum, get in an altered state, and journey to them and have deeper conversations with them. That's how I connect with my ancestors.
Thank you. Martha, your hand is raised. I don't know if that was from the previous moment and question, or if you had another thing you wanted to say.
Oh, wait, so Ganyamatope has a question, please. And I'll repeat it if you can't hear him.
Thank you so much, Nakárori. I just want to just want to thank everyone who has spoken, because I'm recognizing myself in what people are speaking. I just want to comment on what we do and how we can make changes. I really think about young people. As you said, Nakárori, young people learn a lot without us teaching. So there's something about us living our philosophy, as difficult as it may be, because the social construct sometimes does not allow us to do this, but there needs to be a certain sense of courage for us to live our way, because I learned my most important lessons by observation. And those lessons have stayed with me. And at how we live now, and there are so many shackles still around us, but I've been thinking a lot about chains, and I recognize that the chains themselves are the ones that are the clues to our freedom, because the chains are made of links. When chains are made, they're made of links. So within those chains are the links to the ways that we can do things better. So that's one of the things that I noticed. And in terms of, I like the word "all" that was mentioned by one of the questions that appeared. I speak a lot with people from these highly industrialized lands and ethnic groups that are associated with the damage that the planet is facing, and quite a lot of people in those situations also yearn for their connection to their indigeneity. So there is something interesting about how the categorization of indigeneity has come, because those also who are easily pointed as having caused the damage are also yearning for that. So there's something, maybe Nakárori, in maybe offering a space for people to explore that indigeneity for themselves too.
Thank you, Ganyamato. That was brilliantly said, and I'm so honored that you're here and made time to join us, especially considering your circumstances right now in Scotland. So we've exceeded the time, people have fallen out, but I want to close in a reverent way, honoring our ancestors, and also taking a moment, if you have any water next to you, coffee, Coke, anything with water in it, I would invite you to imagine, and if you don't, just feel this for a moment, that you haven't drank for days, your lips are parched, and you come across this beautiful gift from nature. Take a sip. Feel it in your mouth. Thank Mother Nature and our ancestors and the universe for this gift. Keep the song with you. Ojos, hojas, cielo. Eyes, leaves, sky. Think about what kind of ancestor you want to be. Perpetrator, survivor, ChangeMaker. And with that, I honor all of your ancestors and my ancestors, the ancestors of the lands that we're on in this moment. And that all, remember that all that we do, it's thanks to our ancestors. We haven't done this alone. Thank you. Be well. Bye.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you all. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you for yours.